Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. It's an honor to be at this prestigious event. I want to thank you, Dr. Fatima Bathman, for giving me the space to have these important conversations. We're here today to talk about the technology talent we need for the future and how we need to look differently around traditional and non-traditional roles and career paths into IT, and why STEM is moving to STEAM. But before we dive into this topic, let me just spend a little bit of time introducing myself. I spent 27 years in information technology in both high tech and oil and gas. So 15 of those years was spent at Intel Corporation. And then I moved to BP for another 12 years. I am now the executive director of ISAW International, which is an organization to advance women equality globally using technology and using innovative approaches to solve gender equality issues around the world. But I have a lot of experience in IT, and I'm continuing to drive and use that experience to bring to ISAW as a way that we can actually use it in a different way. So that's a little bit about me. And the other thing I can share is I've created a couple of organizations. Some of those organizations I created while I was in my role in IT. I created the Oil and Gas IT Benchmarking Group, which is the top 10 oil and gas companies in the world. That brought me to Saudi Arabia on many occasions, working very closely with Aramco. I established another forum that was non-competitor companies that were international, to share best practices and compare IT innovation and automation. The other organization that I'm quite proud of that I helped co-found was an organization called GROW, Gulf Region Organization for Women. And I also sit on the board of a refugee organization that I co-founded in my local community, helping 4,000 Syrian refugee families. So I stay quite active and quite busy. And that's a little bit about me, but now why I'm here is to talk to you about technology and technology talent. And so the skills needed in the future are going to look very different from what we thought was appropriate in the past. As we move into artificial intelligence, augmented reality, the Internet of Things, how we have to support design, technology is very different. Plus our users are more sophisticated. They're more experienced. We can no longer give them a flat, uninspiring solution. So we have to think differently about how we source and what talent we need to support the demands of the future. Now, we also know that we always need to innovate. Things are changing around us so quickly and so fast. So innovation is key to how we think about the teams that we bring together and the talent that we source. And we know that innovation happens in a team. An idea might happen as a person, but to bring that idea to life, to implement on the scale that we're talking about, you need teams. And we know because of data and information that mixed teams are the best, mixed in perspective, mixed in academic backgrounds, mixed in gender, actually create the best outcomes for us to have the most creativity. So that's why the conversation around STEM is starting to move to a conversation around STEAM. So STEM is your traditional science, technology, engineering, and math roles, and these are so important, and everybody will know the term STEM. And we need to continue to promote STEM fields for both men and women. These are very highly skilled roles, and we need this talent. We need this understanding and this learning. It's so important. But as we move into the future, we also need to actually make sure we source creativity. We source visualization. We source different ways to think and perspectives. And that's where the art comes in for STEAM. And when they talk about art, we also need to think beyond just an art skill. We also need to think about other talent that would be needed in our IT development teams. So when I think about the years I spent in information technology, yes, there were a group of people that were architects, that were developers, that were coders, but there was so much around them that was a support structure, whether it was stakeholder management, whether it was marketing to our internal customers or our external, customers, whether it was just communications, leadership. There was so much more around the STEM roles that had to come into the organization to help us run it effectively. And so that's where we're actually thinking beyond just the talent we source from STEM into the other talent aspects that we need to have in our organizations. Now I'm going to tell a STEM story, and this is actually my story. And I'm going to take you back 30 years when I first came into information technology. I was hired at Intel as an artist. I didn't have a degree in computer science. I didn't have a degree in information management. All my training and all my background was in graphic arts, and I had a dream of being in marketing and advertising. But my first real job into the workforce at a corporation was at Intel, and they hired me in to draw pictures for a piece of software that they were implementing in factories all around the world where English was a second language. So they wanted pictures to illustrate the processing instructions for each operator at each station for each product going to each different customer. And then obviously the text would sit next to the picture, but it would be in English. And so the vision was we would draw all these pictures to make sure that the instructions were followed correctly. In a year and a half, I drew 900 pictures. And I not only had to draw the pictures, I had to learn what I was drawing. I had to shadow the operators. I had an office full of products and boxes and labels and everything you can imagine because I had to draw it. And the other thing I had to do is I had to make sure that what I was drawing matched the written instructions that were going to be displayed on the screen. And what I found is the written instructions in many, many cases were not representing what was actually happening on the factory floor. So I had to go back and align the written instructions and making sure that the drawings and the written word were aligned. And I spent a year and a half doing that. And then when I was done and we implemented the project, my boss brought me into his office and he said, Nancy, he said, I'm actually going to put you on the next project, on the next design team, because we need you to bring, your skills to bear in this new project. And I looked at him with fear in my eyes and a deep breath. And I said, I draw pictures. I said, I don't build software. And he said, but we need what you've learned. We need your process knowledge. We need all the experience that you've built over this last year and a half around the operating process across all the factories for the assembly test sites at Intel. So I stepped into that team. And I had a lot of criticism. There were a lot of people that didn't want me in that team. There were people that had master's degrees in computer science, experienced years of software development. And here I was, this person stepping into their team that drew 900 pictures. But I actually thrived. I actually really, really thrived. I was a fish in water. When we were talking about how to solve hard, difficult problems, I was the one on the whiteboard with a marker in my hand, illustrating and bringing it to life, how we could actually tackle these problems. When it came to how do we interface with the users, it was me on the whiteboard thinking, illustrating how we could actually have the users interact with the software. How could we make it intuitive for the users to flow through it? How could we streamline the process? And so I spent a year on this design team and really kind of made a name for myself as far as someone that was contributing at a scale that was different and uniquely special because of the visualization and how I visualized things and how I could bring things to life. That led me then to take on a small project. They actually gave me a small project with another developer, and we implemented an automation capability for 4 of Intel's factories in the planning space. And when we finished, we actually saved every planner across these factories 20 hours per month. And it became quite a small little success story that got a lot of notice and notoriety because of the resource savings that we brought to bear, which led me to then take on the responsibility of a major program and project across all Intel factories around the world, 30 factories across 5 different jobs functions, where it was manufacturing, planning, logistics, customs and licenses, and finance. So I was now managing a team of 10, an extended team of 70 people across the world, re-engineering and redesigning Intel's supply chain. And so I went from this person who was an artist into a role where I was running major programs for Intel's supply chain. And then I ended up being the owner of a suite of applications within Intel's supply chain. And then I was tapped on the shoulder to do a special project for the CEO of Intel, because they wanted us to prove how well we did IT. And that was my step into competitive intelligence and benchmarking. And that's where I moved the dial. And I have to share that when they started talking about STEAM, I could relate, because I guess I was just a person that was ahead of my time back in that day. And as I look back on my career, there were so many times that I was actually embarrassed because I actually had an art background. My training and my education was in art. And I was in a world of technologists. But when I started having people that had master's degrees with computer science working for me and on my team, I have finally started feeling comfortable that I was contributing at a level that was making a difference. And so I am a testament to the fact that people outside of traditional STEM skills can add value, an important value, and bring different perspectives and skills into the world of technology. So that's my story, and it's a testament to STEAM. Now I want to actually talk again about teams, right? So we talked about STEM versus STEAM and how we need to actually have the space for these creative visual people into the space of technology. We also know that studies have proven that gender diverse teams also add productivity improvements and stimulate innovation. And so when we think about the talent we need to source, we definitely want to make sure that we hone and we source the STEM type roles. But only 20% of the people that graduate with computer science degrees are held by women. And I don't know if this statistic actually holds true within Saudi Arabia or each country, but this is more of a global statistic. So 20% of the students coming out with this degree are women. And we know we need gender diverse teams to come in to help us be innovative. So what we need to do is think about women outside of those STEM roles. Because when I was early in my career choices, if someone told me that I wanted to have I was going to have this amazing career in information technology, that wasn't attractive to me. I wanted advertising. I wanted marketing. But I wouldn't go back and change my career in information technology for anything. It was amazing. And so what we need to do is think about how do we bring women into information technology that might actually have great talent and great contributions, but haven't made the choice to choose STEM education. So we need to look for talent that's in art, talent that's in marketing, talent that's in sales, talent that's in communication. And we need to do this with men too. It's not just women. We need to make sure when we think about the talent that we're bringing into our IT activities, that we actually think holistically. We think about what are all the skill sets that we need to actually face the challenges of the future. And we need to hire appropriately. The other thing there's a study around is how do we develop our full set of capabilities? Who we actually become. You know, the contributions that we make, what is the foundation of that? And the study actually says there's 3 components that develop your capability. The first one is your education. The next one is experience that you create, that you have on the job in your life, and the exposure in your network. 10% of who you actually become and the capabilities that you have come from your education. It's foundational. It gets you in the door. It gives you some basic principles and understanding. But where you really shine and where you really learn and you really prove yourself is in that experience set, doing the hard work, being involved, contributing. And then your exposure is your networks, right? Who you have mentor you, who you have sponsor you, the organizations that you're involved in, the breadth and relationships that you have in your industries and across the world. And so education is important, but the other aspects that build out your full set of capabilities are really your experience and your exposure. And again, I'm a living testament to this as well, because my education obviously didn't fit the mold of the work and the career that I actually chose. Now, as a recap, so what is the technology talent we need to the future? How do we look differently at technology? So the first thing is we need to continue to promote STEM education. It's so important. And I'm a huge advocate of women in STEM, STEM roles. You know, it's key, and we need to continue to move the dial. It's also very important for men to take on these types of educational roles. But the other thing is we also need to hire creative talent outside of traditional STEM education. We need to look for the A, for the art, for the creativity, for the different left brain versus right brain thinking that brings in. The other thing we need to do is look at traditional and non-traditional positions. So when we think about hiring talent in information technology, you know, a prerequisite shouldn't always be that I have a technology degree if my job is stakeholder management or customer engagement or graphic design, because I'm bringing to life augmented reality and artificial intelligence, right? So think about what is the position and what is that skill set variety that I need to bring into my organization to make sure I actually am well-rounded and I have all that great learning that different disciplines bring in and that are so necessary as we face the challenges of technology in the future. And then the last thing that's really important is thinking about the diversity that we have to have on our teams, not just in gender, but also in ethnicity, also in local versus international perspectives. And then obviously inclusion is so important. When we bring in these different people with these different backgrounds and these different talents, we need to make sure we create inclusive environments, because when we do that, that's when we actually create the technology workforce we need for the future. So I've done a lot of talking, and so what I'd like to do is pause at this point and open it up for questions.
We open the floor now for questions. So whoever is interested to ask any question, please go ahead. Yes, Engineer Majid, please.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nancy, for your approach. Actually, it's very interesting, your approach to change from STEM to STEAM, and you add the art. And the art by itself is not a science, and it's totally different from the machine. It's related to the human himself. And as they said, that the language of science is the accuracy, the language of art is the honesty. And in this case, I think that you integrate the both human intelligence and machine intelligence presented by artificial intelligence. So this is really making the thing is very, very comprehensive, and you put the language of science and the language of the art, and there are two approaches between these two languages. But actually, how can this be applied in reality when you speak about the art that includes the music, include the painting, include the story like Dostoevsky, like Shakespeare. So you are just making a Newton with Shakespeare, and this totally different approaches for the achieving the reality. So art by itself represents the personality, and it cannot be done by a teamwork. So this is the first time I see this approach from a different angles. So what is your comments on this?
Yeah, I think actually the beauty of this is when you bring them together, the power of these things working in harmony creates different experiences, different outcomes, different technology. And when they're done in a silo and they're separated, we're not going to have the full impact that we need when you talk about artificial intelligence, when you talk about augmented reality, and when you bring in the diversity of perspectives and diversity of thought processes together in a team environment where you're co-creating solutions, it's really powerful. And I can speak to that personally because I was the one in these teams that could easily visualize and take ideas and bring them to life on a piece of paper and help people see how we could actually create solutions more quickly. I think my skills, my contributions allowed us to get to answers faster because I could actually help visualize the problem in a different way that we could then drill down into different solutions. So that's one area where I think I contributed. The other area is definitely on the output is how does the user see it? How do we engage with the consumer of the technology that we're developing? Today's user is very sophisticated. Today's user is not the user of the past. And they expect to be inspired. They expect to be touched. You know, you need to touch both their hearts and their minds. And how do you build technology that does that? And even our average corporate user now has much bigger expectations on what technology should look and feel like and engage with them as. And I think the art side of it is what's going to help the technology side make that experience very different. And so have them in that team where the problems are being solved and the challenges are faced will come out with different outcomes.
I can see one example that can be as a model for your approach. It is the architecture. Architecture is including the art and also the science and technology, like the mosques or the cathedrals and all these things. It's both the only profession that integrates art and science and technology. So your approach also is coming to that approach, but I don't know if it can be applied or not applied. This is based on your experience. You can tell us, since you are joining the Intel and before you have been studying and your profession is an art. So I don't know how this fits in the artificial intelligence, a new model or non-traditional career path.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy and a perfect example. I love that. And I'll probably use it. You're right. When you think about architecture, you bring in all the engineering aspect and obviously the art. And technology needs to move into that space as well. And specifically, if you think of augmented reality, right? I mean, that technology just standing on its own, it has to have art. If it's too cold and it's too flat and it's too robotic looking, it's not going to actually engage in the way that we needed to engage the users. And so, you know, that space is so obvious that art has to be a part of that. And it has to be a part of the solution earlier in the process. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be brought in later to say, you know, how do we actually now make this appealing to our user base? It needs to be a part of the early thinking and the early design things. And when we think about artificial intelligence, how do we design artificial intelligence using both left brain and right brain capabilities in those early stages of thinking and how it's going to show up and how it's going to engage the user and really how it's going to store and make decisions for us. And it needs to actually have the different type of thinking and creativity that comes from a person with art skills or visualization skills into those early team designs and development.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I may add also something to what you have already said. When it comes to STEAM, we are talking about creative AI, and talking about creative AI involves how AI can write a story, can change a drawing, can also edit a drawing, how AI can interact with human, where human can also touch the drawing, for example, okay? And the drawing will be affected with each and every personalities, and give something new piece of art that will come out. So creative AI is very important. All this type of things, I mean, even in music and other things as well. But talking about STEAM and creative AI, they cannot be separated, because all this type of applications requires a lot of algorithm, mathematics behind it, and the beauty of how human can reflect their thoughts, their minds, their knowledge, their characters and their behaviors in a completely different way mixed with technology. This maybe give us a chance to think about an event we could announce it soon related to creative AI. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a perfect scenario where you can see that skill set is so important. And I love the term creative AI, because then that actually shows where the need is great and in demand, and a part of the solutions that AI will bring in the future.
Excuse me, may I ask, do you think that an artist like you deal with the AI, and then we have a product that the AI can give us a poetry or a melody or a novel? Do you think that we can reach this point?
Or a picture.
Or a picture, yes, all the kinds of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no limit, I think, to what AI can achieve and do, right? The possibilities are infinite. However, how we think about AI creating those infinite possibilities has to be thought up in the beginning, right? We have to help structure AI to be able to do those things that we want it to do to help and support the future. And so absolutely, I think AI can do a lot of things in this space, but I think how we structure AI, how AI is set up, and how we think about the capabilities that AI can actually service and offer has to be done with a frame of art and creativity built into it, not just, structural engineering and technology engineering. So absolutely.
Yeah, let me put it in another way. I can draft my ideas in another way. The artist, if he have a profession of IT, and then the AI product that can be produced as a novel or as a poet or as a melody or as a picture, as you said, can we see inside this product the fingers of the person who have been dealing with this profession? Like you yourself, you want to be in the AI and you have a background, deep knowledge in art. So the AI product, actually it's your product and you are in the shadow.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about it in that form, but absolutely an interesting perspective. I'd actually like to ask Dr. Fatima, because she's a specialist in AI, to actually help respond to this question as well, because my background obviously is art, but many, many years in information technology. So, you know, the way I see it is, yes, that capability is there, or can be developed there and can manifest itself through AI. Dr. Fatima, would you add anything to that?
I'm not going to scare anybody, okay? But I think we can answer the question beautifully once we started our creative AI event, okay? And everybody can feel and touch exactly to what extent AI has done. I'm not saying that AI is going to eliminate the beauty of human being or nature, but maybe we're going to see something different with technology, a mix of technological beauty that is mixed with natural beauty as well, and human beauty, something that has not been combined before. Maybe we're going to see a new kind of creativity where we have not been uncovered before. AI can create poem nowadays. AI can create music. AI can create photos. AI can create articles. AI can debate. AI can do lots of things for the time being. And I believe that such applications and existence of creative AI in the future, it is going to make huge and tremendous changes even to our understanding of art. And it's going to emulate even the old art of that we used to visit, probably inside museums and inside that nobody can touch. Maybe we will make all these types of arts touchable, and maybe we can make it even, we can add sense to these arts, not just to make it touchable, but maybe we can take it more to a more communicative level, where we can speak to it, to parts of it. So I think AI is going completely to change the world of creativity, bring different talents, mixed type of talents, and I think it is worth considering creative AI and explaining how STEAM and STEM can integrate together and what exactly is needed when it comes to digital arts. Thank you.
The one thing I would add to that is, it's one thing to think about the A in this sense of creative AI, right? So when we think about the A person, which is, you know, the visual person, the, you know, the kind of the creative person from an arts lens, and we think about, yes, they're needed when we develop this creative AI, whether it's music or art or poetry. But even when you're not developing creative AI, when you're creating AI to run business processes, when you're creating AI to automate workflows, that also needs the A in that team. When you bring that A person into that team that's using AI for more traditional type applications or solutions that technology brings, they will add value. They will add value in those teams as well, and the outputs of those teams. And so just don't think about the A being a needed resource for those type of creative AI outputs, but also think of them as being critical and key resources in any technology development that's happening, because we need that thinking with AI and we need that interaction with our users, and they will add a lot of value to a traditional technology team. Are there any other questions or comments?
Any other
Yes.
question?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, science itself is just for discovering, but while art is a new creation. So that's, I mean, a very deep difference between the two approaches. So when we say creativity of AI, means that the art itself is a new creativity, while science is discovery. So I don't see how can we merge these two definitions.
You don't see how you merge them?
Yeah, I mean, they're totally different approaches and different, the role of science totally different from the role of art by function, from function point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you combine them and then you bring them together, you develop masterpieces like the most beautiful mosques in the world, right? And so if you think about the great analogy, when you think about architecture, they combine engineering and art to create these amazing buildings and these amazing structures, and the two of them together is what makes it fantastic. And I think that applies in technology as well, is when you bring those two things together, you actually have a different outcome. You have a different experience for the end user.
But the main issue of the AI is the computation power. At the end of the day, it's computation. It has more computational power than the human. That's why the power of the AI. So while architecture is different, this is what I can see.
Yeah, and yes, we are computing with AI, but for an end goal, for an end state, for an outcome. And it's that end goal, that end state, and that outcome that will be influenced by the A contribution.
So do you think now there is a new profession called STEAM profession?
Oh yes, actually people are talking about it all the time now. It's been, STEAM is actually getting more and more attention. It's really, you know, you can Google it and you can read about it, and you know, there's a lot of movement in from STEM to STEAM. And when I started hearing about it a couple years ago, obviously I could personally relate because I am a living proof of someone that came into technology with an A background and rose to senior level leadership positions with that A background and contributing, you know, in a different way, in a different level. So no, STEAM is not something I've made up. STEAM is absolutely a new way of thinking about the skill sets we need for the technology workforce of the future.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. But I mean, from the IT itself, is there a new profession designed in the IT sector that the one who is capable to have this profession, he have a STEAM background? Is there a name for that profession? Non-traditional IT?
Yeah, not within IT. And I think that's the whole concept, is you wouldn't look to traditional IT education. You would actually look outside of traditional IT education to these other areas of discipline, and you would source skills from those areas. And obviously, you know, there's a learning curve that they're going to have to, you know, go through as they become a part of these IT teams, just like I did. But it didn't take me long to really step into a career in information technology and contribute at high levels. So no, you wouldn't look to actually say, can I hire an IT professional that's, you know, comes with an art background. But what you would do is you would look to hire people that were in graphic designs, that were in, you know, working in, you know, creating visualizations. You know, those type of skill sets is where you would go after, those type of disciplines in education.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? So what was interesting, I guess, was the fact that STEAM is probably a new concept, even though it's been around for a couple of years. But I guess my question is how many of you on the call actually had heard of STEAM? How many of you were aware that this was an important topic and conversation that's now beginning when we talk about technology talent?
I'm very aware of it. Yes, I know about it.
Yeah, I am aware about STEM, but I'm not aware about STEAM. This is the first time I come across this term.
Oh, good. Well, I'm happy to be the one that introduced it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, because very interesting. And still, I didn't absorb it till now. It's not fixed in my mind till now. Because I'm confused a little bit about the two approaches between the art and the science. And, I don't know, because we are talking about two different spheres. There are a biosphere, and where is the architecture is in the biosphere, which is the materialized life, and we are talking about the infosphere. And the infosphere is totally non-touchable. And that's where the AI is, in the infosphere.
Yes. But I'm living proof you can bring art into technology and have outcomes that are unique and different. The one thing I would recommend is Google it. Just Google it. There's a lot out there. It's starting to be talked about more and more. I know other corporations are really seriously looking at hiring in this space and bringing those art skills in to their technology teams.
Let's say, is there somebody can, the artificial intelligence, can write a scenario and give it to Hollywood that they make their films?
There you go. Dr. Fatima, there's another project for you to put on your long list.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions from the audience?
It's been really rich presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for understanding, for presenting this nice presentation. Okay, and we hope to see you again, Nancy. Maybe you can join us when we start creative AI.
I would be honored to. I would love to. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was an honor to speak to you guys about this. You have to remember that I was in a very different place 30 years ago. I think I was just ahead of my time. And so when I see STEM and I start to realize, you know, my career and my career journey, I'm very much in a place where I want to advocate this. I want to represent it, and I want to make people think about different skill sets that they need to create the technology of the future. So it was wonderful for me to have this opportunity to speak with you and share. So
thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Dr. Fatma, for your terminology that you said about creative AI. This is just a new drafted terminologies. I don't know, you'll have to be patented.
Inshallah, we are all going to be together, meet together, and show the world more about creative AI and in our society as well. And I'm sure it's going to be a more wonderful event just like this one, inshallah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you all.
Thank you. Very interesting topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.